The deck of the Revenant is empty at this time of night, save for maybe one or two people on lookout. The spectral figure still stands at the gunwale, pacing back and forth across the quarterdeck, staring at the tangle of ships that is the Talon Flotilla. The specter's hands squeeze onto the rail of the gunwale, but they go right through and form fists. In the distance, amid the blur of torchlight and reflections off the water from a full cinder and waning wraith, a blood-red outline can be made out in a sitting position in a specific tavern. On another island, a man in simple robes fills a bucket of water from a well in an organized garden of shrubs and trellised vines. He leaves the courtyard garden and walks towards an imposing building with a massive pyramid roof of intricate colored glass panels in wrought iron. He walks beneath a colonnade that circles the building and enters the Church of the Enduring Servants. There is no service at this time of night, but he walks through an enormous open room where the congregation meets and brings the water to a basin in the back office where a man and woman are meeting at this time of night, then immediately leaves. The woman places two bloody hatchets on the ornate desk and moves to wash her hands in the basin, where we see blood swirl and color the clear water. When she pulls them out, a blood-red tattoo is on her wrist, almost moving. The trials are proceeding well, she says, overly comfortable in what is clearly a clandestine meeting where she is placing bloody weapons on a clergyman's desk. The Cynostra Society's blaming pirates or the Norish for all that missing Elethrios iron, and the Navy's diverting more patrols to cover the scientists' regular routes from Nuboka, so I think we should be able to start the next stage soon. I've found these abilities satisfying. I don't feel a whole lot of anything anymore, but this makes my heart race. Across the desk, an older man in the fine vestments of the clergy, clearly a high-ranking member, looks up at her, clearly perturbed at being disturbed at this time of night. I'm invested in your success, Marama, but I detest your methods. We must maintain the perception of our order being unaware of yours, in case this goes poorly. Your reputation will only benefit from this sort of chaos. Ours most certainly cannot abide any. Don't worry, Elder. We are very good at the misdirection. Her smile is almost predatory. When we're finally ready to announce ourselves after our victory over these bastards, it'll be too late for anyone to stop us. Elder Durand grabs a cloth from his desk and dabs the sweat from his brow. He looks nervous as he mutters, "The truth endures." Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Ironsworn Sundered Isles. This is Season 2 following Cassidy McCabe in the heart of the Dominion, and I cannot wait to find out where this goes. We've already had quite a few curveballs just in world building and Episode 1. I'm trying to maintain a sort of through line with the Kyrody Dominion from Season 1 and Dine's story to now, and I do want to get to some maybe like fallout or rumors about what was happening from Season 1, but we'll see what happens. Before we get into today's episode, let's talk about announcements. In case you didn't notice, I dropped an episode on February 1st, the beginning of Zine Month, and I had the wonderful opportunity to sit down with Tanya Floker and talk about their new game, Mum Chums, which is currently backing on Kickstarter. It has already met its fulfillment goal, but it is a game about the people who care for children, and it is so wonderfully set up for those emotional types of role-playing scenes. If that's something that you're into at your table, I highly recommend you check out Parent or Not. Ironsworn will continue on weeks 1 and 3, and week 2 this month is going to be a special episode since we already dropped perspective checks on the 1st. We're going to be doing our Valentine's special, and it is going to be a 2-player game with my wife and I are going to be playing Starcrossed by Alex Roberts, which I'm sure a lot of people know if you're into the indie scene, but it is a game about two people who really, really want to, but really, really can't, and it uses a Jenga tower, so get ready for that sound effect eventually in that episode. And lastly, the 4th week this month is going to be a toss-up. I currently have it set to be Mining Media rom-coms, because again, if we're talking Valentine's Day month and February, why not talk about something that I think a lot of tables shy away from is romance at the table because obviously it can be uncomfortable depending on who you are playing with, but I do think that there are really great ways to structure interpersonal relationships within an RPG campaign or story, or just building characters who might have that feeling for one another and exploring that without having to get too explicit or talking about what makes rom-coms work and really digging into those relationship dynamics and how you can use stuff like that at your table. All right, those are the announcements. Without further ado, let's play some Ironsworn. Last episode ended with Cassidy McCabe sitting at a table with Captain Roland Burke of the Enduring Blade after having taken his satchel from him, which presumably has the charted maps and navigational maps and things like that, for the location of a sky island, which is going to be coming in or around the heart of the Dominion, and that is going to be a very big prize that a lot of different players are going to be moving for, and whoever has early access information on it is going to get the jump on it before everyone else and make out much more profitably than others. So now that Cassidy potentially has that, unfortunately, a new player entered the scene to end the episode, and it was a sickly young Inquisitor of the Church of the Enduring Servants with their bodyguard as they walked into this tavern. Captain Roland Burke and the crew of the Enduring Blade immediately assumed a sort of subordinate nature to this young Inquisitor and apologized for the present circumstances, but more importantly, this Inquisitor looked familiar to Cassidy McCabe, which makes no sense, and it's because he bears a striking resemblance to her first love and the ghost that now haunts her, Leigh Stirling, who, as a ghost, is present in this scene, always kind of present around Cassidy in one way or another, whether or not he is actively trying to communicate something or influence the situation is always up in the air. But surprisingly, this young Inquisitor looked right at the ghost of Leigh Stirling, and Leigh Stirling looked back at the corporeal body of what should have been his dead brother, who apparently has been resurrected. So let's pick up there and see what happens. Azriel Stirling walks forward, using that iron-shod staff as almost a cane, and we hear the clicking. He is yet to say another word as he sits at the table with Cassidy McCabe and Captain Roland Burke. He appears sickly, sitting down slowly, but when he sits, before starting any of the negotiations, he grabs his iron bondstone from around his neck and presses it to his lips, presses it to his forehead, and finally touches it to the iron-shod tip of his staff. The censer-like head of the staff almost goes liquid-looking and begins to change form. Small holes begin to appear in it, almost like coral that has died and dried out, and let out a faint blue-green light, and a mist comes out from the top of this staff, which the young Inquisitor greedily inhales. Then, when he opens his eyes once more, he suddenly does not look so frail at all. He looks eager. Captain Roland Burke is the first to say anything and says, "Inquisitor Stirling, again, I must apologize for this, but I'm so grateful that you are here to help in the negotiations. This one caught me unawares and appears to have learned about what we were researching." Azriel Stirling holds up his hand to Roland Burke and says, "It is fine. Let us begin." And holding his hands out, he says, "Lies will be exposed." And the entire crew of the Enduring Blade, including Captain Roland Burke, respond almost reflexively and say, "The truth endures. Life must meet an end. But the spirit endures," they all answer. And at this, he looks sad. But then he looks up and sees Cassidy McCabe. For the record, just to catch everyone up, mechanically speaking, we still have 8 momentum from that little skirmish at the end of last episode. So we're going into this, we still have a pretty big bargaining chip. Yes, we are outnumbered, and we are in their territory. They control the location, but Cassidy is good at this part. You know, if it comes to a fight, this is not what she's particularly good at, but she's been a spy and an informant and probably, you know, talked her way out of quite a few things like this. So let's see where we get. The first thing I am tempted to do is roll for my Haunted Path asset here, because it says, when you're haunted by the spirit of someone whose death you caused or mourn, or both, when you make a move to call upon their insight, add +1. On a weak hit, we also endure stress. On a strong hit with a match, we get to mark 1 tick on our Bond's legacy track. I think we would definitely be calling on Leigh's insight into how to negotiate and talk to his brother. But we'd have to determine what we are doing to get that insight. And I think it's just going to be secure an advantage, right? We're attempting to gain leverage in this situation because we do hold what is hopefully these maps and charters in this bag. At least Captain Roland Burke and everyone else seems to think that whatever's in this bag is important enough to stop fighting and give Cassidy a second here. So let's go ahead and just play that card. And so we're going to secure an advantage. We're going to get +1. And sadly, I think we're doing this with heart because in a way she is attempting to kind of reinforce the fact that she did not come here to fight. She did not come here to steal these plans to go track down this Sky Island for resources and loot and things like that. She's doing it to close in on somebody who is pulling strings. So she's using it to learn more about maybe who is requesting these sorts of jobs or who is benefiting and profiting from these sorts of ventures. So she's just trying to work her way up the influence ladder. And if she can convince them of that, then hopefully she can say, you know, you can still go out here and do whatever it is you wanted to do. I need to go out there and basically spy on people to figure out who I need to then follow from there. All right, so here goes. That is a 4 +2 for a 6 versus a 9 and a 2 on the challenge dice. The 9, of course, being Wraith, meaning mystery, magic, all that. And it is absolutely that Azriel Stirling is not going to let his brother's ghost influence this one way or the other. So that is a weak hit, so we're going to endure stress because, again, yeah, this is stressful. And that brings us down to 2 spirit, which is concerning. So I think that as Leigh is maybe trying to feed information to Cassidy, which I haven't figured out how that works yet, but they definitely have some kind of connection that allows them to communicate. I don't think it's just like a verbal, she can talk to this ghost and no one else hears him thing. I feel like that's too easy, so it's got to be something else. But before he can really say much or do whatever it is to communicate what he wants about his brother, I think Azriel says, "My brother told me much about you, and I'm not surprised to see the mark he left on you. You two had much in common. Unlike my brother, I found my way into the church, into a legitimate life, not sneaking and leveraging information, underhandedly earning your gold and favors, making enemies. And as I understand it, your brother also has made a life for himself, away from your scheming. Explorers Guild, if I'm not mistaken. Although by all accounts he also services faithfully as he should. I believe you are not in this for the resources that are undoubtedly on that Sky Island, because I don't believe you know the potential of what they are, nor do I think that you have a crew worthy of sailing to them and beating out any of the many, many others who would not hesitate to slaughter you all for whoever is paying them for their part in this. So why don't you take out the maps and lay them on this table? We can discuss what comes next with more information at our fingertips. A more informed decision will benefit us all, I am sure." Cassidy hesitates, but doesn't really see a way around this, So she does open the bag and pull out a collection of scrolls and books and things like that, including the captain's journal and other things that detail the course that was sailed by the Enduring Blade and the maps that they have collected that anticipate the incoming Sky Island. So I don't like playing out entire conversations when I'm playing solo, because I'd rather just, if I'm going to do that, like write it out like I did for the intro, where I can think a little bit more about how to foreshadow things that I would like to kind of tee up to hopefully hit in the future if the dice go that way. And instead, I'm going to roll on a couple of things here, and we're going to montage the rest of this tense negotiation. The first thing I'm going to roll is Gather Information, and this is going to serve a dual purpose. One of Cassidy analyzing and trying to get as much information out of these maps as she can, so that way, if she gets out of here and doesn't get to keep these maps, which she doesn't anticipate being able to do, that she can relatively successfully lead the Revenant out there, if that's what we're going to do. And secondly, it's going to represent Leigh trying to get a gauge on whatever's going on with his dead brother, now sitting here seemingly totally alive, Azriel. I'm not going to take the +1 on Haunted, because Cassidy is primarily focusing on the maps, but it may come to influence something in the future. We'll see. So when we gather information, we roll plus wits, which is +2 for us. Here goes. That is a 6 +2 against a 6 and a 5 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. On a strong hit, you discover something helpful and specific. The path you must follow or action you must take to make progress is clear. Envision what you'd learn, then take +2 momentum, maxing out our momentum track at the moment. And I think that what Cassidy learns is not only where to sail to intercept this Sky Island, but also I think she sees kind of a list of signatures that is a council of powerful men and women from all sorts of industry. So it could be from Dominion government, it could be from private industry, it can be from the clergy. Actually, I think she sees probably at least one signature from a known one of the faiths. Let's go ahead and roll real quick. I'm just going to roll a d6. How many different factions within the big religion are there in Kyrody Dominion? 2. 2 feels good. All right, so one of them is the Church of the Enduring Servants, and let's just roll up real quick what the other one's called. So for organizations, there's a couple different ways to do names. I'm going to roll a d6, and we're going to do organization identity of the theme aspect, theme persona. All right, so here goes. Organization identity is 49. Covenant. Oh boy, that's appropriately religious. 69. Hey, is holy under faith, and then 77. Lightbringers. Whoa. Okay. Oh, actually, 77 is martyrs. Whoa, that's a cool dichotomy, actually. If one is the Enduring Servants, and the other is the Covenant of the Holy Martyrs. Maybe the faith is split between those who are thought to be called to continued service, like the Enduring Servants, and the martyrs who have escaped that sort of eternal obligation through appropriately righteous action. Wow, that's really cool. Okay, so we have the Church of the Enduring Servants and the Covenant of the Holy Martyrs. Neat. All right, now let's just roll a quick D100. If it's 50 or less, it's going to be a member of the Enduring Servants. If it is greater than that, it is the Holy Martyrs. It is the Enduring Servants, of course, because why else would young Inquisitor Leigh Stirling be here? So basically, on that strong hit, we get +2 momentum. We will see maybe if it comes up later about what Leigh learned about Azriel, if he could divine anything from his ghostly abilities. But Cassidy not only gets the intercept course, but she also mentally marks down all of those names and remembers them. I'm not going to roll for them now. Not important. And I think that this scene is going to end, surprisingly maybe, with swearing an iron vow, because we haven't done that yet, and we need to. We do have our background vow, which is to discover the identity of Will Solace and free Leigh's ghost. And I think that there's probably a vow associated with both our ship, the Revenant, and Quan, our clockwork contact for the Ebb. And we're going to get there. But let's go ahead and swear this iron vow, which is going to be that in order to leave here unbroken, or having earned enough trust from both Captain Roland Burke and Inquisitor Stirling, we're going to swear an iron vow, and that's going to be that Cassidy, McCabe, and the Revenant are going to be allowed to intercept this Sky Island, and they're going to, in the event of the Enduring Blade being under any sort of fire or need of aid, they will provide it. And if anything gets out about this information being leaked, it will be assumed that it was a member of the Revenant who did that. And of course, we're not saying the Revenant, we are saying the Red Diamond, because that is the false flag that we are flying under at the moment for legitimacy purposes. So let's swear an iron vow to ensure that both of us profit from this. And of course, this happens in the heart of the Dominion by holding our iron bondstones, which are usually family heirlooms. And actually, here's where I think we're going to roll it. The result of this is going to tell me whether or not Leigh noticed Azriel's bondstone is his family's, or if it's a different one. So, when we swear an iron vow to complete a quest, write your vow and give it a rank. This is going to be a pretty low one. I think this is going to be dangerous, because there are going to be other ships and patrons and people trying to get to this Sky Island for various reasons. We don't actually even know why the Church of the Enduring Servants wants to get there, but after seeing what we saw with this iron-shod staff, and seeing who we know to be someone who died walking into this tavern, we probably have an idea. Let's go ahead and roll plus heart. Yeesh, am I regretting making heart a +1 stat. Here goes. That is a 4 + 1 for a 5 versus a 7 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. On a weak hit, you are determined, but begin your quest with more questions than answers. Yeah, that tracks. We get +1 momentum, but we are already maxed out, and envision what you must do to find a path forward. I think what we are envisioning is how do we do this without having to really be arm in arm with the Enduring Blade this whole time. But with this, Cassidy McCabe makes an agreement, sworn on an iron bondstone, and moves to leave the tavern and the crew of the Enduring Blade. Real quick, let's just roll a Ask the Oracle, and I'm going to add the cursed die to this roll because I think if the answer is no, that it is not the Stirling family's Bondstone, that there might be some more dreadful, mysterious things afoot here. So I think it is, let's just go with 50-50, because it really is up in the air. I could go either way with this. So 50-50, if it's less, then it is the family Bondstone. If it's greater, it is not. A 33 is a yes. This is the Stirling family Bondstone, and I think that Leigh probably does feel like somehow this is his brother. And from one dead but somehow living character to another, we flash forward to Cassidy walking up the gangplank of the Revenant in the late hours of night, just before dawn. Cinder is retreating into what is quickly becoming not a night sky, but that purple and then orange on the horizon, and we see the spectral figure of whoever it is that walks the quarterdeck of the Revenant on full moons, and Cassidy looks and says, "I'm sorry that took so long. We will talk soon, I promise." The face scowls and says, "It better have been worth it. We are bound by blood. You will see my quest done." And she says, "I will see your quest done." And she looks at her hand and the scar where she cut it when she first found the Revenant in that cave, hidden away by the ebb. And let's go ahead and let's just load up the Vows right now. Let's have a little flashback scene of when she found the Revenant following the haunted urging of Leigh Stirling. So, to keep this scene quick, I think that we see Cassidy at a real low in her life. She is alone without Leigh as the second member of her crew. They've always worked together. One gets information, one sells the information, one's the face, one's the skills, the shadow, etc. Like, they were a very good team, but he died in getting the name, and the name means nothing to her in this moment, and the name still means nothing. It must be absolutely infuriating, but she never stopped hearing his voice, and at first maybe she thought it was just her own thoughts kind of imagining what Leigh would say, and it started with thoughts. It started with that. It wasn't her hearing his voice, but it was knowing how he'd react to her thoughts or what she said or how she acted, and all of a sudden she was feeling this sort of presence, this undeniable presence, and she didn't hear him say anything. She couldn't see him yet, or maybe that's when she first did. She was dealing with this like, I'm going crazy. Why can't I get rid of this second voice in my head kind of thing? And then she sees him, and she follows him out to the beach from wherever this was. She's in a coastal town. She probably worked there a lot, but she chases him out to the beach where the lights are gone, and all there is the light of the moon and the stars, and she follows him down to the water and around a cove, and she's chasing him down the beach. Eventually it leads her to this cave where, hidden behind something like overgrowth and treacherous kind of just slippery rocks and things like that, she finds this cave. And the ship inside this cave should not fit through the small crack entrance she found, but yet here it is. How did it get here? And she decides to explore it. As she gets closer, the blur, the image she thought was Leigh, is more obvious and more detailed. And she climbs aboard, and this ship is not wrecked. It's not damaged. It's not showing any signs of any reason it shouldn't be fully seaworthy and out there for some reason. And the cargo's empty and all this stuff, and she makes her way to the captain's quarters. And when she opens the door, it is perfectly preserved, and she walks through and finds books, logs, navigational tools, charts, maps, everything you can imagine, everything she would need to be there. But she can't open one of the drawers, and so she takes out one of her knives, and it's a flashback scene, but we're going to roll anyway. We're going to use our knife not as a weapon to attack or threaten, but as a tool to basically cut an object to break into this thing here. We're going to add +1 and +1 momentum on a hit. We're not going to use momentum, but here goes. I don't know if that should be plus edge or plus shadow, but either way, that is a 5, +2 or 3 versus 2 6s for a strong hit with a match. And this is what happens. She breaks that seal, breaks the drawer, and opens it, but when she does so, she cuts her hand, and the blood seeps out, and she's making a fist, and a few drops of blood drop on the captain's desk. And in doing so, she has awoken the Revenant. And I'm going to roll a few more things here to kind of get an idea of who the Revenant is. And we're not going to get all the answers, because that's not fun, but we're going to get a little bit of information. And because it is a spectral figure who is the embodiment of this ship, or maybe it is a specter bound to this ship, I'm just going to roll a bunch of stuff on cursed tables, because it's that kind of campaign, it's that kind of vibe, and they're fun. So let's roll a cursed character detail. 13, well, that's appropriate. Doomed, sure, okay, and we're going to ask the Oracle, does the Revenant remember who they are? Or does this newfound ghostly form that they take mean that they don't remember anything? I think it is unlikely that they remember who they are. which could be very interesting. So we need to roll a 25 or less. 77, this person has no idea who they were. I believe we've described them as a man, so they're going to be a man. And we're going to go ahead and roll on the Cursed Ship Mission Oracle to determine what they do remember. All they remember is basically how they met their end, but not why they're here. So let's see what that was. 35, corrupted or sickened by the effects of a cursed ship or relic. Well, I don't think it was the ship. I think that maybe this captain, they may have been affected by a cursed relic, and I have an idea of what that may be. So what is it that Cassidy has to agree to? What vow does Cassidy need to swear to this ship to become its new captain? I think that she's the new captain regardless. I think that she has awoken the spirit that unfortunately is bound to it, and in order to purge this... Oh man, Cassidy is just the I'm haunted by spirits character. This is wild. She's going to have to agree to this vow. So let's just roll a couple times on action theme to see what the Revenant wants to do. We could roll on cursed character goal, but I think this could be more interesting. Let's see. 34 is deliver. 66 is price. I'm not crazy about price. Let's see what's in the other oracles here. Ooh. Focus 66 is remains. Deliver remains. Yep. We just gotta bring this ship to a very specific place. And ooh, do we know what this place is? Okay. Well, let's check our locations here. We have 4 main islands in the heart of the Dominion. We do have a couple notable locations, one of which was ghost-plagued ruins. And I kind of rolled that into the Razor Isle, which is the devastated island that is a reminder of the war's devastation, the cataclysm that started this centuries-long war. So, ooh. Do we need to bring this to the crest? There's two cursed kind of delves that we set up. So I'm just going to say, if it is 50 or less, then it is delivered to the Razor Isle, where nobody wants to go, because that place is definitely cursed, and everyone in this otherwise incredibly densely populated Myriads island chain avoids it. Or it might be that we need to deliver the Revenant to the other cursed location, which is underneath the capital city of Carcordia. So let's see. Nope, yep, gotta take this ship to the Razor Isle, which is really funny because we were really close to it when we went to the Talon Flotilla. They almost, like, overconfidently or kind of maybe purposefully set their tangle of ships up there because they knew no one would approach this island except for this vice and smuggling kind of neutral, tolerated nation state kind of thing. So, even more the reason that this full moon and this specter walking the quarterdeck, looking beyond where Cassidy went to where he needs her to take him. Oh, brutal. Nice. All right, well, there's our reason to go to the Razor Isle eventually to deliver the remains of whoever this Revenant was. Oh, right, but we gotta roll that. Okay, so before I roll that swear and iron vow, I think that we are going to make a connection. We are going to give focus to an existing relationship that is not an ally or companion. We're rolling plus heart. Man, heart as a +1 is rough. A 5 +1 for a 6 versus a 9, and a 1 on the challenge dice for a weak hit when making a connection. The connection comes with a complication or cost. Yeah, we know. All right, but mark that connection. So now when we swear this iron vow to deliver the remains of the Revenant, which is interesting, are the human remains on this ship, or do we need to basically crash this ship on that island? Who knows? Let's find out. We're going to swear an iron vow to complete this quest, and we're doing it to a connection, so we add +1. So now this roll plus heart is +2. Here goes. Whoa, a 6 +2 versus a 5 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a strong hit on this iron vow. You are emboldened, and it is clear what you must do. Take momentum. We're maxed out on momentum. But yeah, that's kind of a crazy moment if we do this flashback, where Cassidy awakens a ghost of a ship, the ghost ship itself, and it is declaring its service to her, and in return, she must promise to deliver the ghost's remains to the cursed isle. And that's when the ebb stepped in. And speaking of the ebb, let's flash forward a little more. After this flashback scene, maybe that's where we see Cassidy wake up, dreaming about this event that she unfortunately has not done yet for this ship, and she was so close last night. Not only was she close to the Razor Isle, but it's very rare that there is a full moon, and she can speak with the captain, or whoever we're calling the Revenant. That is the joking title I think she gives it. And yeah, the morning comes, and we see she emerges from the captain's cabins out onto the deck of the ship, and they are sailing in the morning light towards the largest island of the myriads, and they are sailing towards Crania, which is the city high atop the cliffs. And again, to kind of highlight, because we spent our first session in the Talon Flotilla, which is just a bunch of ships that are tied together and floating in calm waters. A reminder that this setting for the Sundered Isles that I'm playing in for Season 2 here is very Mediterranean in vibes, and it is absolutely beautiful. Just bright blue waters, limestone white cliffs with dashes of green for bright grasses and shrubs, and lots of vines and gardens, and there are sea spires jutting out of the ocean in random places, and at the top of this cliff is an enormous, covering the entire city of Crania, at least the upper part, because we made some changes here I'll tell you about in a second, of like this coral dome that has a bunch of holes and pores that let in light down onto the city. And I think the architecture is very old Greek, and like lots of columns and open forums and things like that. And then there are bright colors associated with the roofs and things like that. So it is like an absolutely gorgeous, very wealthy section of the oceans here, because the Kyrody Dominion has been winning this war and bringing home spoils, and they are very well off, which is very opposite of the tone of this campaign, which is there are still secrets and there is still things happening in the underbelly of this dominion. So sailing towards it in the bright light of mid-morning, I think that the dark black hull of the Revenant kind of sticks out like a sore thumb as it approaches Crania, except we said that it's at the top of some cliffs, which would make sailing there pretty damn difficult, if you ask me. So I've made some changes to Crania, and I think that it's actually one city with two very different sections. I think that there is the cliff city beneath the coral dome, which is what everyone knows as Crania, because it looks like the top of a skull. And then underneath, we just said sea spires and things like that. I think Crania is the city that has basically a large open cave mouth with a bunch of sea spires and maybe what used to be like these arches that went out into the ocean, that maybe some still exist here, but basically it looks like an enormous open cave. And then within that cave are terraced sections of an undercity. And I don't mean that in the criminal way. I mean, Crania is probably one of the nicest cities in the Dominion. It's where the historians live, and it is the cultural kind of hub of the Dominion. I think this is where archives are. I think historic sites are here. So even this undercity, I just mean that it's within a cave, and there's lots of natural light coming in here because of all of those various openings to caves and things like that. And this is the city where they've basically made, maybe there was a sinkhole, or maybe there was a natural event that did this, but basically there is a winch system to take people once they put their boats into the harbor. Either that's outside of the cave system, or maybe it's big enough on the inside to house plenty of dockyards and things like that, that will bring you up to the cliffside portion of the city of Crania. So we get this absolutely gorgeous setting where the Revenant is furling its sails to coast into what is Lower Crania, the city, and the crystal blue clear waters. You can see the limestone features underneath it where there are shelves and there are areas of shallows that probably have like fisheries and things like that in it. And it coasts in towards a dock, and there are just various levels of buildings and things like that. I think that this is where a lot of the commerce of Crania happens, and there may be a lot of interesting places here, but they're just sailing past it at the moment. People are looking from all over, doing their work and whatnot, and eventually Cassidy and the crew are getting ready to step off, and we see a quick conversation before everybody disembarks, because Cassidy lets them know that this is not shore leave for a while. We are getting back on this ship soon, and we are setting a course to intercept a sky island. Obviously not saying this in the dockyard where everyone can hear this. And her first mate, Asana, is basically giving everyone their responsibilities as they go through the city. Not only are they going to have their fun and do what they're going to do, but they're expected to do certain things. And Cassidy also has a friend to meet here as she makes her way towards the winch system. We see that I think it's very likely that this is basically just a like perfectly round sinkhole. If you ever just like Google natural sinkholes, they're like eerily circular. And I think this is one of those. So let's say 75 or less. 75 on the dot. I think it is eerily perfectly circular, and they have created this really cool scaffolding system and counterweight pulley that makes an elevator. And Cassidy is going up it with a few other people, and when she emerges and crests that soil surface of the upper city of Crania, it changes altogether, and all of a sudden the sky looks very cool. Imagine looking up at a dome that is letting in light in all sorts of weird ways onto this ancient looking, I'm imagining it like a Greek city with wide boulevards between columned walkways and gardens and large buildings like forums. And think of like those buildings in Washington, D.C. for all of my U.S. listeners that are just these huge buildings, museums, and places of importance and history and culture. And Cassidy probably sticks out like a sore thumb here. But she immediately begins walking confidently towards a corner of the city where we see her come up to a wonderfully manicured lawn and yard and small building that is a shop front and home, it looks like. And there's a greenhouse, and the front of the building says this is where people can buy unique artifacts lost to the sea, and it's like a restoration reclamation sort of place. And she doesn't walk in the building, instead she goes around the corner to the greenhouse and peeks her head in, and turning around in there and standing up, towering over the not exactly short version of Cassidy McCabe. I think we said she's something in like the 5'9", 5'10" range. She's not small, but towering over her is a clockwork person in an apron and with clods of dirt all over their metal hands, as their eyes, which are just these two bits of light behind glass lids and lenses, looks at Cassidy and says, "Change of plans. Have you ever orchestrated a jailbreak?" And that's where we're going to leave it for this session. Hopefully you liked it. It's kind of a setting the scene, which is weird that I did it in episode 2 instead of episode 1, but I think it's coming along, and I'm setting a bunch of different fronts to have to deal with at the same time, and we'll see what happens. Presumably next week is going to be the race to the Sky Island, and now we have a few other questions that still need to be answered, and we still are not really any closer to figuring out who Will Solace is. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider finding me on the social medias so you can be alerted to whenever I get a new game or post a new episode or anything like that. I assume if you're subscribed to this podcast, then you know when I'm dropping new episodes. But, if you want to see pictures of stuff, which is mostly just new games and nerd stuff, then find me there. I'm trying to be more active on Threads and Blue Sky, where we can have more interesting conversations about games, but I am admittedly bad at social media. So if you want to talk to me directly, you can email me at reneplaysgamespod@gmail.com. I always love hearing from folks about things that they enjoy or want me to know about or any of that stuff. If you feel incredibly generous, you can leave ratings and reviews on your podcatcher of choice for this podcast, which just helps it kind of funnel its way into more people's suggested feeds and stuff like that. Just word of mouth. Tell people that you think might like it to give it a shot, and hopefully I'm not too annoying. And if you're feeling the most generous, you can throw me a few bucks on my Ko-fi page just to help cover the cost of podcast hosting, and any additional money I hit over that podcast hosting and the fee for the transcription service and video conferencing software that I use is going to go towards getting art for new games, because I can doodle and it's fine, but I want my games to look nice, and I'm going to start commissioning art because I want to put out more games this year. And I think that's going to do it, so until next time, careful what you bleed on, because it might wake up and tell you to bring it somewhere you really don't want to go.